Welcome along to Man in the Mirror. It's Hayden here, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Craig Andrade, who is the founder of Raconteur, and it's the evening in Tasmania. Craig, how are you? Thank you so much for doing this.
Sure. Hello, Hayden. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me on the show, and good
Oh, it's my
evening
pleasure.
or good morning.
Good evening from Tasmania, and
That's right.
tell
Yeah.
us where you are, because I think it's a very special part of the country, and I guess it's a big part of the Raconteur story as to your
Yeah.
exact location.
Sure. Well, I'm coming to you from my farmhouse in Tasmania. I'm actually sitting at the dining room table, but I'm at a farm which is about half an hour north of Hobart. The area is called Tea Tree, which is somewhat ironic for a perfumer because tea tree is
Yes, yeah,
so medicinal and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so camphorous, and yet I am living on Tea Tree Road in Tea Tree. This
Perfect.
area at one point, several hundred years ago, was covered in tea tree, and obviously it's now farming, pastoral land, lots of vineyards, and not many tea trees in sight. So I'm going to be putting a few back in.
Yeah. And are there many sort of ingredients and raw materials? Are there things that can inspire you? Because I've looked at a couple of the videos on your site, and it does look like there's some beautiful ingredients and some raw materials around. It must be a beautiful part of the world to sort of do your work and to be inspired by.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's one of the reasons why I moved down here from Sydney. Well, part of it was, and I guess we're sort of getting into, what one of my big new chapters is for the business.
Mm,
But essentially, it's a 12-acre farm, and I'm planning to grow and do a paddock to perfume concept where we grow and distill on site and make things from our extracts. So the idea is really to, I suppose, bring people into the world of the perfumer and
yeah,
really bring the world of the perfumer closer to the source, which is the growing. So growing, distilling, and harvesting on site and making from there. And really, for me, I feel happiest when I am on the farm and love being here. And I wanted to do this thing. We have so many native botanicals which are endemic to Tasmania. And part
mm,
of being here is to shine a light on them and to grow them and distill from them. And a blockbuster would be Baronia, for example. So Baronia is just an extraordinary native. It's this tiny little, slightly brown looking flower on the outside, or, burgundy, but it has a yellow cup on the inside.
right.
And so it's this very unassuming plant, but when sort of droops and hangs fairly low on the ground. And so if you lie on the ground and stick your nose under a Baronia shrub,
What
you
does it
just get
smell
this
like?
heavenly scent that comes out. And like all good Australians, the best part of them is on the inside and not their appearance. So it's a beautiful flower. It's complex and it's
Yeah.
beautiful. So there's many things like that down here, and the
And
plan
do you
is
intend to invite people in? Is that the one of the ideas later down the line that people will be able to customers will be able to visit the farm and get to experience this firsthand?
absolutely. Hayden, you are cordially invited on this podcast to come and visit if you're
Wow.
ever. If you and your listeners, if
In,
you're ever in Tassie, please do come. Yeah, the idea is to absolutely open this up. So I'm
yeah.
about to start building accommodation on the farm. So there'll be a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom luxury lodge. There'll be a big retail cellar door for perfumery. So
Mm.
pairing what I do with some incredible Tasmanian sparkling, selection of wines, beautiful
Wonderful.
charcuterie, cheeses, small goods, all sorts of yummy, delicious things that Tasmania has to offer. We'll have manufacturing on site as well. And then obviously an event space where you can come and be here and do
Yeah.
classes and learn and immerse yourself in my world. That's the
Sounds
plan.
absolutely idyllic.
Great.
And
So
we, yeah,
2027, pencil it in. See you soon.
book my plane ticket. I'll get ready.
That's
Yeah, I
right.
love it. Um, well, let's rewind a little bit as well, because you mentioned this being a an act two, I suppose, and that you had a career before Raconteur. So yeah,
Mm.
tell me a little bit about what you were up to before, and what was it that made you jump into the world of perfumery and start up your own brand?
Sure. So, look, beforehand, I was a lawyer in private practice. I was working as a corporate lawyer doing mergers and acquisitions and private equity. I had trained and studied, I grew up in South Africa, trained and studied
Right.
there, did law and economics, and then went to America on a Fulbright scholarship, did my master's in America, and
Wow.
then did the New York bar
Yeah.
and started my first job as a lawyer in New York. So it's pretty amazing. We did
That would have been a
the
full-on
Mandela
place
government's.
to work. I imagine that would have been pretty exciting. So when are
Yeah,
we
that's
talking? 90s?
yeah. So
1990s?
mid to late 90s. So
Yeah.
I guess it was 95, 96, around there, mid 90s.
Good time to
Um,
be in New York?
a great time actually
Yeah.
because it was a boom time.
Yeah.
Very sort of, um, America in an upwards economy, so really
Mm,
exciting place. And the firm I worked for, we did the Nelson Mandela Government International Debt Finance, so that was a really important part of
right.
why I chose to work with the firm. So it was my way of doing something to help rebuild South
Yeah.
Africa
Yeah,
in
yeah.
terms of post-apartheid South Africa. So it was pretty amazing. So I did that. Then moved to London. We ran that relationship out of London because of the time zones with South
Yes.
Africa, and then eventually found my way back into South Africa, and then finally decided to settle in Australia, and so ended up in Sydney and Melbourne doing this corporate law thing. And I suppose
Mm.
to your question of the movement from law to perfume, it's not an
Yeah.
obvious one. Um,
Not necessarily, no.
no, it doesn't just sort of come to mind. I think, look, for me, the essence was I was getting into my 40s, and as I started to look at the pace at which we were working, pretty much on call 24/7, 7 days a
Yeah.
week, 52 weeks a year, working for, extraordinary clients, being, multi-billion dollar deals. And I suppose all of that is exciting and wonderful
Mm.
and stimulating. But I got to a point where I just looked at the pace of this thinking, there's a lot that I'm also not doing with my life that I'm
Yeah.
wanting to do. And I just felt that that level of commitment and the requirement to give so much was leaving no space left
Mm.
for the rest of me. And so I started to just question, how sustainable it was to keep going like
Yeah.
this because there was
Yeah.
just so much more I wanted to do. And
Mm.
my partner at the time had bought me this candle making voucher. And so I was sort of actively exploring, what am I going to do? What is this life post law? What does it look like? And was very open to thinking, actively about it. I'm doing a lot of work with my therapist to question
Right.
my identity and just doing a lot of personal work around what it takes to be fulfilled. What
Mm.
is the meaning of life? I mean, these are big existential questions.
Yeah. But
Um,
laying
and
some
so
groundwork for things that would come next, it sounds like.
that's right. Because I think if you
Yeah.
haven't done the work, you don't get to make good decisions that are
Mm.
well informed, that have
Mm.
been well considered. And I am I'm a deep thinker, and I suppose I think a lot about the why, the what, the how, and did all this work and had a few ideas percolating. And I remember this candle making voucher that I had. I'd sat on it for a year, and there was one more class left on a Thursday afternoon. The teacher was moving back to France. And I was like, oh my God, this voucher's going to run out. I checked, there was one more spot in the class, did the class, left my law firm at about 4 in the afternoon. And my team was like, where are you going? I'm going to a meeting, you know?
Yeah, keep it
So I
vague.
was, yep. And so I disappear, went off to the class. And I remember when we added scent, you know, I'd come from this very stressful law firm space
Mm,
and, you know, trying to get a whole lot of things to deadline and, you know, just running this team. And we just sort of, you know, just very, very stressful
mm,
place. And I remember when I added the scent, I breathed it in and I just felt my physiology change. And I just felt this level of, you know, calm just
mm,
start to come over me. My pulse rate slowed. I felt my breath, you know, I was just sort of exhaling. And I just was clocking what was going on. And I just didn't understand what was going on. And so I remember having this extraordinary out of body experience moment where I couldn't believe that scent had the power to change your mood, to
mm.
play with an emotional reaction to what was going on, and to affect your physiology. I did not, I thought scent was lovely, and we'll get on to my
Yeah,
journey with scent, I'm
yeah,
sure,
yeah.
but I had not understood the power of scent. I did not. And I immediately went home going, oh my God, like you cannot believe, I was telling my partner, this is what happened. And I
Mm,
don't understand it. I need to figure this out. It was so beautiful. It was so powerful. I was so moved by it. And I immediately, you know, applied my legal analysis brain to, well, what is this? How does scent work? What's the frontal cortex of the brain? What is the olfactive system? You know, how does this entire thing work in our physiology? And I think the more I started to look into it and try and understand it, the more I realized how complex it was, but how
mm.
beautiful it was as an art form. And the more I became intrigued. And so fast forward from there, I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to understand how to become a perfumer because the
Yes.
art and the craft starts there.
Yeah.
So that led me to the Grasse Institute, where I booked in to do some courses to study and then embarked on the journey of learning to explore what all of this meant. And that was
Mm,
the trigger was probably thinking about life and whether I wanted to keep working the way I did. And then the pull was this extraordinary art form, which was so complex and nuanced that it had all the things my brain needed to be intrigued and satisfied.
stimulated. Yeah. Yeah. I love that though. There's almost that epiphany moment, but it sounds like you're someone that doesn't just go off on a whim. You know, you had a very successful career, which I'm fascinated about. And I suppose it would be very easy to say, oh, you know, just move from this. I guess for people who are not in that kind of world, you know, we just think of the cliches and the movies and you know those kind of law things. But it's much more nuanced and much more complicated than that. And probably you know there is a reward to it as well as something that you know is about you know well it would be intellectually challenging as well as lucrative and all those things, but I guess it would be very easy to say, oh, you know, it's such a different thing to do, which it is. But I'm wondering, you know, it sounds like there's things that you bring from that world and that analysis and that thought, and someone who studies and thinks deeply, you can bring that into a business, can't you? And where you've got to with Raconteur, it's not just that you're shedding one skin and becoming this, you know, cravat wearing crazy artisan. Like that's not how life works. I don't think that
Mm.
you take things from your various stages and they help build the person that you are. Is that something that you
Mm.
would recognize? Do you like do you take things from your world of law and bring it into what you do with Raconteur?
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably don't. I probably don't approach it from the perspective of identifying all the skills that I had as
Mm.
a lawyer and think, okay, well, this will be really good and that'll be
Yeah.
really good. I don't process it in a sort of fairly deliberate way, but I think I went down this path to learn the craft of becoming a perfumer, studied hard.
Mm.
There's a lot of technical analysis, there's a lot of practical analysis, there's really a commitment to a lifelong of learning. And I
Yeah.
think, and it requires, I think the fundamental skill is actually being curious. And that's a
Mm.
skill, because
Yeah.
being curious is about accepting that you never know everything and that you're always intrigued by the world and by life, and that that is an exciting thing, not a daunting thing.
Yeah.
So curiosity as a value, as a skill, or as an attribute, or whatever you want to call it, I think if you don't have it, I think you're dead. And if
Mm.
you've got it, I think it fuels everything when you're doing something from a place of passion. And so, as a lawyer, I was always curious about the outcome. I was always
Mm.
curious about the option. So the values were the same. There's no part of me that's changed in terms of my values.
Yeah.
I think the intellectual rigor you bring to being a perfumer is just no different, as in you think about what are you going to do? What's the concept? What are the ingredients? Why? What are the gaps? What are
Mm.
the things I'm trying to fill? You understand structure. And so all of the logic, if you will, that sits behind a legal brain, I think that logic applies and transfers across to how you formulate, how you make things. But then what's really nice is that you just get to also play, and you get
Yeah.
to break rules. You get to sometimes not know the rules, and you get to
Mm.
make mistakes that turn out to be beautiful mistakes. And I think the imperfection in perfumery is one of the most beautiful things. I don't think
Yes.
things should be
Yeah.
perfect. I think
Yeah.
what's incredible is allowing the molecules you work with and the raw materials you work with to breathe, to bring life, to twist, to turn, to shape, to surprise.
Mm.
And all of that is the complete opposite of what you want as a lawyer. You don't want
Yes.
surprises.
No,
So
no, no.
what's
That makes
so
absolute
nice
sense.
is on the question of what's transferable, everything was transferable. And on the question of
Mm.
what, is of value in this business, well, I think clearly there are obvious things like just the ability to read a contract, yes,
Yeah.
tick, got
Yeah.
that done. The
Yeah.
ability to draft, the ability to put anything in words, easy, because
Mm.
that's what you did for bread and butter. What's so nice about this world is that I've gone from a world where everything had meaning based on words and grammar,
Mm.
and people would win or lose based on words and grammar,
Yeah.
and everything was billed in 6-minute increments. And I've gone to a world where no word has meaning. This is an invisible art form. And
Yes.
ultimately,
Yeah.
now meaning here is not driven by a 6-minute billable unit or by the semicolon or the grammar. Meaning is just driven now by whether you like what I've done or not. It's entirely
Yeah.
subjective. And so going from a world of objective measurement to this subjective world of pure like, dislike, what do you think? It's
Mm.
daunting for sure, but it's the same sort of skills I think have transferred across. And if anything, I now feel free to make decisions where I don't always know the outcome. And I made a
Mm.
scent recently, which we'll get onto in the new collection called No Tell Motel. And there were
Yes.
two
No.
things
Yeah.
that I worked with in that collection. One was this olive fruit absolute, so an actual extract of olives, and the other was
Yes.
the
It's
Tasmanian
fascinating.
mountain pepper. And I had no idea how those two were going to combine because I'd never worked
Mm.
with the olive fruit extract before. I'd worked with the mountain pepper on a project I did for an Australian singer, Troye Sivan,
Yeah.
and
I know Troy
I
Sivan.
knew how amazing the product was because I'd worked on it and had this very special extract, and I'd wanted to work with it again, but I had no idea what the outcome was going to be like until I did it. Then I did it, and then I lost my shit because I was like, this is so good. And
It's
sometimes you don't,
fascinating, sort of playing around with that uncertainty, and playing around the edges, as you say, which is so different, I suppose, from the exacting, precise world of law. And I loved what you were saying about curiosity. And I suppose maybe that's one of the things about coming to a job like this slightly later, is almost that humility that we have. And you talked about not knowing everything and being curious to learn. And I suppose some of that, and we talked about it before we started, is about the network that you build out and the people, the teachers and the mentors and the contacts along the way. That must
Mm.
be such a big part of it for you as well, just to be open to learn and collaborate and work with people. Is there some great teachers and some great mentors along the way that have helped you?
For sure. And I think that is I think part of all of this is, I think it all starts with, how someone nurtures your soul when they
Mm,
teach.
mm,
And I think a good teacher makes or breaks everything. And at the Grasse Institute, I had some amazing teachers there. Mandy Aftel, who's this phenomenal legend in our industry in San Francisco in natural perfumery, is a close friend and mentor. And I've, value having people like that in your life because in my life, they always give good counsel. They, I think they've also seen everything, and they also are very generous in sharing their personal perspectives on navigate this industry.
mm,
And as a niche and independent perfumer, I just think there's incredible value in that. There's incredible kindness in that.
mm.
And I'm indebted to these people for helping shape me. And to the lady, Elise, who was my very first teacher, who, in the candle making class, Elise, she had her own brand. She has her own brand. She's a wonderful French lady living in Australia. Her name's Elise Pioch. And,
Right.
I remember later, I went off and did this thing, went to Grasse, did my perfume brand
Mm,
thing and launched my business. And she'd moved to France. And one day, I was sitting in one of my retailers, having a meeting with the buyers, and I was presenting, my latest collection. And she walked into the retail store of the business. And I saw her out of the corner of my eye walk into the room. And I was in the meeting, like I'm here having a proper business meeting with my
yeah.
buyers, and this is important. And I just saw her, and I hadn't seen her because she'd moved to France, but she had now moved back. So this is several years later.
Yeah.
And I said to everyone, look, I'm going to have to stop this meeting. I'm really sorry to tell you, but a
Absolutely.
lady has just walked in and she changed my life. And I need to go and thank her for this. I'm actually getting
Mm,
quite emotional
yeah.
thinking about it because it was such a big
That's
deal.
wonderful. Yeah.
Um, they were like, oh, who? I said, over there. I said, oh, Elise. I said, yes, I need to go and thank her. So I
Mm,
got up and stopped the meeting, went over to her, and she had her back towards me, and she was standing, by some product, and I tapped her on the shoulder and I said, "Oh, hi, Elise." And she said, turned around. She said, "Yes." I said, "Look, you probably don't remember me, but about 3 years ago, I was a student in a class of yours, and you gave some advice, and you said, look, everyone has a story to tell in scent, and if you follow your story, that is always going to be personal to you and
mm.
something you can do with integrity." And she said, "Yes." I said, "Well, I've done that and I'm doing that." And I said, "I've left my previous life as a lawyer and this is what I do." And I was getting quite emotional at this point,
Yeah.
and she could see
But she was
my
thrilled,
eyes
wasn't
were
she?
welling up. And she
Yeah.
said, "Oh, how wonderful. This is so lovely." And she said, "Well, what is your brand called?" And I said, "It's called the Raconteur." And we were standing right in front of the products, and she said, "Oh my God." She said, "I've seen what you've done. I love your work. I had no idea it was you." And so we hugged and,
Yeah.
did all of that stuff. And both of us were in tears at this point. And she's become a close friend even now later in life.
Yeah.
So
What a
to your
beautiful
point about
moment. Yeah.
community, you
Yeah.
don't know who these people are who you're going to meet, but being open to meeting
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
and being open to the kindness of good strangers, I feel like is a beautiful thing to have. As a lawyer, you'd never be doing this. This would
No.
never be happening.
Well, I totally agree. Look, Craig, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Raconteur and some of the products in a little while. But as always on the show, I'm really interested in my guest's morning and evening routine and perhaps some of the products that might feature within it. So I wonder with you when you're getting ready, are there certain hero products that you love and anything you'd care to mention that you enjoy using in the morning and the evening?
Sure. Look, I have a very simple skincare
Yeah.
routine. I basically do everything in the shower, so it's just very simple. I have a cleanser. The brand that I go to, there's an Australian brand called Sadashi. So
I don't know that.
Sadashi is, yeah, so they're a really beautiful brand. They're made in Western Australia, and they focus on working with a very, very high level of naturals.
Right.
They have extraordinary Australian botanicals in some of their products as well. But phenomenal, phenomenal brand. Megan Larson is the founder,
Right.
and I think just does incredible work. Anyway, so they have a couple of cool things that I work. One is just there's a cleanser. It's a clay cleanser with some sandalwood in it as well. So that's a pretty nice cleanser to have with a clay base.
Yeah.
There's also a little exfoliant that they have, which is like it's called a face polish. So it's just good for getting rid of good dead
Nice.
skin cells.
Yeah.
And then I just use a moisturizer of theirs. It's called a sleek moisturizer. I just put that on, and obviously in Australia you always need a sunscreen, so SPF
Yeah.
over that as
And do
well.
they do SPF? Is it all from the same brand?
No,
No.
I just use a sort of Australia, the Cancer Council recommend a bunch of SPF, so I
Mm,
just use one of theirs. Yeah.
mm.
So that's my
Well, it's a good
routine.
thing
I'm
for
just,
yeah, pretty simple, but
sorry.
that yeah, it sounds like there's some great products and that the actual quality of the ingredients and the botanicals obviously is going to be important to you. So I'll definitely check out Sadashi. You said is the brand
Yeah, Sadashi. So it's S
Sadashi.
O D
Mm,
A S H I, Sadashi.
Sadashi. Well, I will put links to them in the program notes so people can find out about them. And of course, SPF. Regardless of where we are in the world, I shouldn't have to remind people, but it's a really important part of anyone's routine, isn't it, to make sure SPF is used as the last kind of step because yeah, we need it.
That's it. Exactly.
Yeah,
Particularly in Australia. Yeah.
yeah. And what about grooming and shaving, Craig? Do you tend to shave every day? I think it's yeah. It looks fair. I'm trying to see how cropped it
You
is.
see my
Do you,
stubble. No,
there you go.
I have not shaved since I left the law. So that would be now, well, how long has it been? Oh my God, 3 or 4 years? I can't even remember. And even when I was at the law firm, I hated shaving. So I just have a
Yeah,
stubble. So I just have facial stubble, and I just have an electric razor, and all I do is
right.
trim my facial
Trim
hair.
it down.
So
Mm.
I've always got a bit of scruff going on, and I don't even think I know the last time I picked up a razor to shave. I actually don't. I can't remember.
Yeah,
My
it's
head,
interesting.
as you can tell, very hirsute.
Yeah,
So I have an electric razor, and I just basically do trim. Fortunately, I don't now spend money on shampoo and conditioner, which is great. To just keep the hair trimmed, but always, yeah, I don't shave my face at
keep
all.
it quite tidy.
Yeah,
It's interesting though, having to shave every day in a certain job and then not having to do it. I suppose it's another one of those signifiers, isn't it? The symbols that, things have changed and now you're in control and you don't have to answer to anyone and turn up be a certain sort of version of yourself, which is kind of nice, I think.
yeah. But I think even though when I was a lawyer, I was definitely a renegade. I was always in a suit with like a
A little, a little
trimmed
flourish.
beard. I did, and I was always, probably wearing, beads and, an ethnic bangle of some kind. And so I think people had a sense that I was quite different. So
Yeah.
that was very obvious from the get-go.
And Craig, tell me about your relationship with fragrance. Obviously, I've no doubt you're developing mods and new fragrances all the time. I mean, are you? I suppose and we'll talk about some of the Raconteur range. But if it's I don't know, say it's a Sunday morning and maybe you're not having to do work things, what's your relationship with fragrance then? Are you open to using other brands, or is it always something that you're researching and trying, or how do you approach wearing fragrance now that you're in the business?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, on the whole, I tend to, um, so if I just sort of break my days according to probably just thinking about them as days of the week versus weekend days of the week, I'm generally going to work. So I'm going
Yeah.
to my store or my studio, or to meetings. And so, because I'm often creating, or I'm just in the store in Hobart or Sydney or with my
Mm,
team or whatever, I don't tend to wear a lot of scent because
right.
there's an element of my day which will involve a creative output. And because of that, I always like to keep my skin clean for what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
I'll use my scent for my skin for the work. So I tend to keep scent more for if I'm going to a nice lunch or a dinner or an occasion or socializing, and I know I'm not actually having to do any creative work, then I'll use scent. And I tend
Mm,
to really just work with my own either finished products or stuff I'm
right.
working on. And because I'll often want to see how things are developing and try them on
Yeah.
my skin,
Sort of road
I'll
testing.
also try layer things. And then what is nice, and to be honest, I'm quite happy to say this, but what is really lovely is along this journey, you get to meet other perfumers
Yeah.
who share their work with you, as part of the way you interact with them, and I guess just wherever you're meeting them. And when I was in New
Mm,
York recently, caught up with a bunch of perfumers who came to see me in the store when we launched everything. And one of them, a guy called Noah, has given me a bunch of his samples. They're here on my dining room table, and I'm basically going to be opening them this week to wear them.
oh, great.
And so, what I kind of like about this is I think there's also an opportunity for perfumers to support perfumers,
Yeah.
and but where you kind of are close to the artisan and the craftsman. I feel like that's just a really lovely, simple
Mm,
thing we can do.
mm,
So I'm gonna wear them and then shout about them and
yeah.
just say, thank you, Noah. But apart from that,
Nice.
when I'm traveling, I'll often, if I'm in a foreign city, I do often try and find the perfume store in that city or a perfume store in that city that's doing something local.
Yeah.
And I like to find who's working with the local native
What's going on?
botanicals. So
Yeah.
that's I kind of do that, and then I have a memory linked to that occasion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how I tend to roll.
And in Australia, is there? I imagine there's a sort of burgeoning independent and niche scene. Anyway, is there? You talked about this community. Is that the case in Australia too, where you're connected to other brands in the same space?
Look, I think my sense here is we're very much in our infancy. So
Mm,
no, I don't personally think, I mean, well, I guess I've sort of just I mean, I've only been in the space about 3 years now, full
mm,
time. I don't have a very big sense of a community here in Australia. Not at
mm,
all. In fact, on the contrary, I think a lot of brands are getting their work made by perfumers overseas.
yeah.
So I don't actually think there are a lot of Australian perfumers doing original work here on the ground. That's I'm certainly not aware of that.
Mm,
So from time to time, I do get people reaching out who are wanting to study and learn perfumery, and I just guide them to all the places I've been and gone, and say, here are examples for you. But no, I think we're in our infancy. I think we're
yeah.
we're very small. I guess a very small group. I'm not even sure everybody who would be in that group. If you
Yeah.
ask me, I don't.
But appetite from the consumer though. You have a store in Hobart, store in Sydney, and the farm itself. How are you finding how are people enjoying what you're doing, and does it feel different for the consumers, do you think? Are they must it must be quite a different sort of shop to experience and to find out about the native botanicals and the fact that it is rooted in Australia. That must be a real thrill for the customers.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so just to clarify, I guess I'm not saying that there are no other Australian brands
Yeah, yeah.
doing fragrances for sure, like plenty for sure. It's just that the actual original creative thinking, working as a perfumer, designing original work, I think
It's done
that is
elsewhere.
tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, as to what I found amazing is Australians. I mean, Australians love scent. So what's amazing is just being incredibly well received,
Mm.
and I think there's a very healthy landscape for Australians to celebrate the work being done by Australians in Australia.
Mm.
So I certainly think that's a big part of it. I think what I also have found is we get a lot of tourists into our stores. So a lot of overseas visitors are also coming to
Yeah.
our stores going, we want to do something which is something uniquely Australian. So that's been really nice. Um, and I think our stores are pretty warm and inviting and unusual because they are filled
Right.
with botanical installations.
Yeah.
Um, and so they tend to just be, I think, quite beautiful places to hang out in, even if you're not buying a
Mm.
scent. They're nice places to be in.
So, Craig, so here in the UK, the Raconteur is available in Bloom, which is a fantastic place to start. And you talked about the gourmands and obviously the native botanicals element, but this thread that runs through the second collection of these grown up gourmands. What Tell me a little bit more about the thinking there and why you went for this sort of gourmand theme.
Yeah, sure. Look, what was so funny is, I was when I started to work on the second collection, which was, I guess more than a year ago.
Mm.
I was working on a couple of ideas, and I had a couple of interesting materials that I was wanting to showcase, like the Tasmanian mountain pepper, and um, when I just started to look at the families where I had done work originally and the families that I was going to be doing work in, excuse me,
No,
all this
don't worry.
talking, I started to just look at the gourmand family, going, well, if I was going to do something in that family, what would it be? What would I have to say that hasn't been said already? I make the bar is pretty high for me in terms of my work, and I'm trying to make sure that everything I'm doing is original. And
Mm.
I'm trying to, I guess I'm a hard marker on myself because I don't want to do things that just repeat what others have done.
Yeah, yeah.
Because what's the point? Why leave a
Mm.
career? Why give up your identity if you're going to just recreate what
Yeah,
someone else
just
has
do the
done?
same
There's
stuff.
just no point, and that's not satisfying.
Mm.
Um, so I started to look at the Gourmand family, and then I started to look at Australia's really iconic um, foods in the gourmand family that were incredibly delicious. And I kept thinking, well, hang on, why is these just this is fertile ground for creative output?
Totally, totally.
And I was like, well, hang on, then where's the emotional resonance in this? Because just because something tastes good doesn't mean we want to put it on our skin.
Mm.
So I started to think about these two worlds, the world of these delicious things that I like to eat and drink, and then the world of these delicious moments in life
Yeah.
that should be celebrated and revered as an artist. And I kept thinking, well, we should bring these two together. And so
Mm.
for me, this latest collection is all about the connections between us, and whether we've known each other for 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 years, 50 years, time is not necessarily a proxy for value.
Right.
Because sometimes you can have a conversation with a stranger in a nightclub at 3 in the morning and have the most unbelievable chat with a
Yeah.
complete stranger who
Yeah.
you'll never see again. And yet that conversation changes your life, or it has the potential to just inspire you to go and
Yeah.
do the thing that you were dreading doing and didn't tell anybody, but you told this stranger and they gave you some advice and it ended
Yeah.
up
It could change
changing your
everything.
mood.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I kept thinking, well, hang on, this is my life, and this is what I value, and these are things that have happened to me. How about I design a collection that draws on my own personal history
Mm.
and shares these vignettes across scent, and I pair it with the Australian gourmand deliciousness that's lurking in my culinary diet. And then what I do is I basically bring it all together.
No, it's fantastic, and it's such a brilliant way, as you say, to showcase some of these foods and desserts, particularly that I guess we know Australia for, like the pavlova and macadamia and the lamington, all these things, and they are very
Totally.
evocative, and I suppose instantly it connects us to Australia, and as you say, to
Mhm.
overlay these beautiful stories, and I think there's an autobiographical element to some of this too, isn't there? And you know,
That's right.
some of the stories that are on the website, the copy is brilliantly written. So I think it's a really fabulous way to talk about Australia and to showcase some of these raw materials and botanicals that we're not so familiar with,
Mm.
but create
Yeah.
these worlds and these great stories around them, and it's done so successfully. And it's yeah, a fantastic collection. God, I mean, we could talk about all of them, but I think the one that I've been drawn to the most is Daintree Raintree. Have I
Yeah.
I've said that right? Yeah,
Perfect.
Daintree
It's a bit of a
Raintree.
tongue twister.
Yeah, you got to say it 10 times quickly, and then something crazy happens. But yeah, it's such a beautiful fragrance, and there's chamomile and sea salt and the different teas. But tell me about Buddha wood, which is the Australian botanical that's in that one. I'm not familiar with Buddha wood, Craig. What's
Yeah.
that?
So Buddha wood is essentially it's I mean Australia has a couple of iconic timbers, right? So we've got
Mm,
sandalwood, which everybody knows.
yeah,
We've got eucalypts, which everybody knows, slightly
yeah,
medicinal, of course,
yeah.
but just a very extraordinary and evocative scent. Um, I mean, Buddha wood is kind of a cross between, if there was a love child between cedarwood and sandalwood, this would
Okay,
be the love child.
yeah.
And so it can be used as a sandalwood extender, but it's not as creamy. It's not the same consistency as sandalwood, but I like to think of it as the love child of cedarwood and sandalwood,
I
is how
love
to
that.
think of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
And, and and so that scent, the Daintree scent, it was. I did this collection. I'll run you through it like 30 seconds just
Yeah,
so you get
please,
the
please.
narrative, the narrative
Yeah.
arc. So we've got Killer Vanilla, which is this scent that I designed for 3 a.m. You know, the time and place where you have the most
Oh
interesting
God.
conversations with people. Could be complete strangers at a dinner party that's going till the early hours in the morning, could be a nightclub, doesn't matter. It's this idea of where you open yourself up to have conversations
Yeah,
with people you don't know. It could be the park in an afternoon, you're having a lovely picnic. Doesn't matter. It's this metaphor for the excitement of the unknown and the
yeah.
talking to people you don't know.
And
That's it. So
being open to that and opening yourself up to those possibilities. Yeah.
yeah, and it's a delicious
Mm.
adult. I mean, all these are adult gourmands. They're not for children. These are
Yeah.
strict adults only, adult themed only. And
And
so
they
they
don't have that over sweet sort of sickly syrupy quality. You know,
correct.
there's nuance and say grown up elements to them.
Totally. And so we've got a lovely smoky vanilla, a mature vanilla. If a vanilla slice went on a 2 day bender in a nightclub, that's what you'd be smelling like. So yes. So that's Killer Vanilla. Then and so the idea was this idea of the fleeting 5 minute chat.
Yeah.
The next one is No Tell Motel. No Tell Motel is this date night scent where I took two of my favorite drinks, the dirty martini and the spicy margarita. And if they went on a date, this is what they'd smell like. And this is where they'd end up in this motel. So it's a very sexy, green, olivey,
And this is the
spicy.
one with that special olive note, isn't it?
That's it. So it's got the olive fruit absolute. So, in other words, an extract out of the olive. It's an absolute form. So, using a solvent. And it's never been done before. And so, it's the first time we've got a fragrant extract and molecule out of the olive. So, it's a delicious, delicious olive note combined with a Tasmanian mountain pepper and a gorgeous green, warm spice.
Mm.
And then there's this lovely sandalwood amber musk dry down. Sexy, fabulous, date
It
night,
is.
success guaranteed.
There you
So
go. And a real sort of
that's that
piquancy
one.
to it, isn't it? Too. There's a the real sort of sharpness and yeah, fabulous.
Yeah. And then we go to Pavlova Casanova. So we've gone nightclub, dates. Now we're into this lovely concept of I wanted to do something for long distance relationships, and this is an ode to the tyranny of distance in long
Ah.
distance relationships. Because the distance is this thing which brings the bitterness and the sweetness.
Mm.
Because when you're apart, things are tough and bitter, and when you are together, things are intensely sweet.
Yeah.
And so, without doing an overtly sweet scent, I took the pavlova, which is our most iconic form of
It
dessert in
is.
Australia. Apologies to any New Zealanders who are listening.
Is it
And
fought over then? Is
it's
it
fought
definitely
over.
as in who came up with it?
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a matter of great injustice, I think, to the New Zealanders. And so the idea is I wanted this bitter sort of fruit note on the top, the sort of passion fruit and lime. So just
The
bringing
lime's
the
great.
sharpness of that, which is big off the bat, but once it settles, you're into this creamy vetiver um, dry down that is quite frankly unbelievable.
Mm.
And when I made this and wore it, I went to bed the one night and I forgot to wash it off. And the morning I woke up, I could not believe how delicious my arms were. And I kept going,
To
I
lick your
want
own
to eat
arms.
my arms.
Yeah,
I literally want to eat my arms. So
it's
that's
beautiful.
the dark horse in the collection
Mm.
because it's the one that surprises everyone the most at how incredibly beautiful it is. So Pavlova Casanova, divine. Then I wanted to design a scent for all the men in my life and the women in my life. And so for the women, I thought about their personalities. They are strong willed, independent, free spirited, a little wild, a little crazy, some might even say nuts. And so Ms. Macadamia
Here she
became,
is.
there she is. So she's smoky and edgy and fabulous. And she's got a healthy dose of orris in there, so some
Mm.
beautiful Tuscan orris. And I've paired
Mimosa,
it
is
with
there?
this.
Yeah.
There's Australian mimosa, so that's the
Mm.
wattle, and I brought that in a beautiful complement to bring wattle and orris together. I felt was amazing, and I loved how they jostle for the slightly soft, creamy, powdery facet in a different way. They actually are quite different, but they complement each other beautifully. And so then I thought about the men in my life and their personality traits, and in the feast of life, they're generally hungry. They are ambitious and they're going for it. And by and large, they all want to have their cake and eat it. And so Lord Lamington became the obvious vehicle for
I
that.
love this one.
Yeah, so I paired the classic cologne structure with a gourmand slice of cake, the Lamington, the sponge cake, a bit of coconut, cocoa, a hint of
Mm.
strawberry, and cream,
Sort of
and
creaminess,
it's
yeah.
delicious.
It really
Yeah,
is.
and so the point of that little monologue was to get you to the Daintree scent, and the reason
Yes.
for that was because all of those were about everybody else. They were about the nightclubs, the dates, the long distance relationship, the men, the women in my life. And the last one I made was for me. And I wanted to design a
Interesting.
scent for me because I guess for all of this to work, for all these relationships to work, you have to be the best version of yourself in
Mm.
these conversations. And that requires starting the day with a level of being grounded, being centered, having a clear sense of your purpose,
Yeah.
and I guess going about your life with some level of clarity. And for me, this scent does that.
It
It's
really
my
does, yeah.
scent set in the Daintree rainforest in North Queensland, where you've got this storm coming through, and I love this idea of the rain falling in a rainforest with this calm cup of tea
Mm.
which we sip on, as you would know, and just enjoy these moments of tranquility and being comfortable with who we are, and this rainforest floor that then sits beneath us. And so all of that just is
Mm.
happening in that scent.
Absolutely beautiful. And I'm a big vetiver fan anyway, and yeah,
Mm.
it comes out so well. Gorgeous.
Mm.
And in terms of the collection, Craig, are there different markets that have different favorites, or is one sort of emerging? Is it possible to say, or how is
Yes.
it working in terms of the collection?
It's really interesting that you picked this as the one you wanted to talk about because
Mm,
Daintree, this rain scent, has become a global juggernaut,
has
and
it?
in every market. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to plug another publication, but
Yeah,
the
plug it.
Rob Report,
Yes, yeah,
um,
yeah.
yes, came out and
My
rated that
friend
the number
Adam.
one.
It was. Do you know
Yes,
Adam Hurley? Yeah,
I didn't until he came out and
he's a good
rated
guy.
our scent independently as the number one men's fragrance in the world for 2025.
Wow. Oh my
So
goodness.
it was a pretty big deal and
He
very,
knows his
you know,
stuff.
yeah.
Oh, that's great.
So that's a really nice thing. And so his reaction, your reaction,
Mm,
the reaction we've had in London, in New York, in LA, everywhere I go, people are just finding that scent is probably the one out the gates, which is
mm,
just blowing up. No Tell Motel, the unbelievable olive and Taz pepper, people are loving that as
yeah,
well. And then I think Killer Vanilla off the charts because who doesn't love a vanilla scent?
exactly.
Um, and then, as I said, the dark horse of Pavlova Casanova creeps in.
Mm,
So that's sort of tending to be how it's playing out.
yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for walking me through the collection. And yeah, I say if you get the opportunity to get a discovery set, or within your city or country, if there's a store that stocks it, you should definitely give them a try, because there'll be something that you'll love within that collection. And so the one that's grabbed me hard is Daintree Raintree, which I think is absolutely beautiful. So, Craig, the name of the podcast is Man in the Mirror, and I'm always really interested in what the guest thinks about the man that looks back at him. And I think we're probably at a certain or a similar sort of life stage. So I wonder how that looks
Mm.
for you right now. When you're getting ready, what's your view of the man that looks back?
When I look at the mirror, I could not be happier with where I am right now in
That's
life.
really great to
I've
hear.
chosen to live where I'm living. I gave up my career to follow a new path. I'm incredibly thrilled with that path. And even though it's not smooth and easy and
Mm,
it's things don't go to plan all the time, there's so much joy in the creative field that I work in
mm,
that I feel incredibly energetic. And when I get up in the morning, I actually feel as if I'm 21 again,
wow.
starting out a new life.
Yeah.
Like I feel that energized and physically, I'm very happy with how I look. I'm exercise, I train, I'm in nature. I
Yeah.
do a lot of things to look after myself physically, and I'm so pleased with. I mean, to be honest, I'm not making it sound like life is perfect. I'm just saying I'm really thrilled with the decisions I've made
Yeah.
and the life I'm living.
And it's amazing to hear. And I wrote to you originally after hearing your brilliant podcast with Nicola and Susie on the scent, and I really connected with what you were saying there about making changes, and this idea of a second act. And I suppose it's quite important that it happened in your 40s, and there was still time to pivot and do new things. And of course there's always time to make changes, but it really resonated with me, the changes you made, and you've found yourself with this new sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. And I'm thrilled to hear it. And like you say,
Mm,
it's not you're not saying, because it's a challenge. You're setting up your own business. It's not going to be it's not perfect every day, but I guess if you're on the right path and something that's bringing you joy, then it does bring energy and vitality, doesn't it? Because it whilst
mm.
it's work, it's not there's not the same pressure from other people. You're generating it yourself, and you're coming up with what you want to do. It's yeah, it's great to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I suppose if you're master of your own destiny,
Yeah.
you like the thing you're doing and you genuinely have found this thing which you are able to take risks with, but be personally fulfilled by,
Mm.
then I don't know what more you want out of life. And
Yeah.
that's the chapter I'm in. And now I've got a very big, daunting farm project ahead where I'm about to embark on and make mistakes, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I'm here to learn and enjoy it. And I think this is so for me personally. I think for a lot of men, they obviously chase career success,
Mm.
and I think whatever that looks like for most men, at some point there is a reckoning if it's
Yeah.
ultimately not the thing which is going to sustain you for the rest of your life, and you've
Yeah.
got to figure that out and
Yeah.
work out how to juggle the life you want to live with the life you are
Yeah.
living.
And of
So
course,
that's what I did.
there's realities around that as well. And I think in my own case, I
Mm,
was probably putting it off making changes for too long because of those pressures that are on us around, the practicalities
yeah,
of life and paying mortgages and
yeah,
bills and family and all those
yeah.
things. They're very real
Mm,
concerns, aren't they? But
mm,
it's
yeah.
really thrilling to see, how happy it's making you. And how do you
Mm.
feel about? I know you were in London earlier in the summer, yeah, promoting the brand. How do you feel about the travel aspect of being a founder of Raconteur? Is that something you relish, getting around the world and
Mm.
evangelizing about the brand, or is it something that you're not so keen on?
Yeah, I love it. I love
Yeah.
travel. Travel is such a big part of my DNA and my
Mm,
curiosity. I love I love seeing the world, and I'm genuinely a curious person who's interested in the nuances of life, and from the seasonal produce to the seasonal botanicals to the seasonal lifestyle, how we live in a simple way that's connected to nature drives me. Um, And so it's always nice to escape a Tasmanian winter for a month or two and get to the Northern Hemisphere and just,
yeah.
do that. And then retreat back to my very big seasonal life that I live
Hmm.
here. So I,
And you
I
spend
do
time
love it.
in Sydney as well, don't you? You have a store there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I tend to travel 1 week out of the month, every
Right.
month. And so I'm on the farm in my store in Hobart. And then once a month, I tend to have a week for travel,
Right.
where I'm doing Sydney and Melbourne, and anything else that needs to tackle.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, finally, Craig, I wonder what are the things that make you happy and bring you joy outside of Raconteur and outside of your day to day? What are the things that make you happy?
Yeah. So look, as I was saying, look, obviously this is a ridiculous life I'm living
Yeah.
because it is so positive and it
Yeah.
is
And
so
all consuming, I
energizing.
guess.
Yeah. But when I'm not doing work stuff, I am actually working either in the garden,
Mm.
or I'm cooking, or I'm in nature doing bushwalks. This weekend was a glorious winter. I took the dogs down to the beach. We've got a beach that's 7 miles long,
My
white
goodness.
sand, and
Wow.
we went for a 7 mile walk on the seven
Mm.
mile beach. Yeah, we swam. Well, the dogs swam. I
What
didn't
dogs
go
have you
in.
got, Craig?
I've got two dogs, a black lab and an Airedale,
Lovely.
and so we do a lot of stuff like that. And so
Mm.
for me, it is either I'm in the kitchen cooking and I like to experiment every weekend with something,
Yeah.
or it's a trip somewhere in Tasmania because I've only been living here for 2.5 years. I like to try and go somewhere I haven't been every Sunday,
Yeah.
and just go and see something new, and or a different part of the state, or walk somewhere, but being in nature. And so it's kind of just driven by that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to spend some time with you and find out more about you and of course the brand. And so I'm going to put references in the show notes so that people can find out more about Raconteur and find their own favorite. But I've loved discovering the collection, and I really hope we get to meet in person next time you're here, or if I make my trip in 2027
Make your way
to
down.
to the farm.
That's right.
But it's been a real pleasure, and I've loved chatting. So thank you so much.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Hayden. Thanks for having me on the show. And obviously, we'll see you next time in the UK. But
I hope so.
2027,
Put it in my
Tasmania.
diary.
All right,
Take
mate.
care. Thanks, Greg.
Take care. See ya. Bye.